It's a real pleasure to be joined by Bobby Carpenter, an Ohio State linebacker from 2002 to 2005, played Michigan 4 times, won the national championship in 2002, and then, of course, was drafted by the Cowboys in the first round. Hey, Bobby, thanks for spending a couple of minutes with me.
Well, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Give us the inside insight into what this rivalry means for these kids heading into the weekend. It's one that so many people look forward to, Thanksgiving week. What does it feel like to play in this game?
Well, it's very unique. I grew up a child of the 90s, which Michigan dominated for the better part of that decade. And, was part of the flip, thankfully, with Coach Tressel getting to Ohio State. So understanding, the Woody Hayes dominance, and Bo comes in the 80s, it's kind of split. And then the 90s where it's really Michigan-centric. And then for the last 20 years, it's really been dominated by Ohio State. And understanding, there were great players, guys who I played with in the NFL, Joey Galloway, Terry Glenn, Mike Vrabel, that, Eddie George, they may have beat Michigan once, maybe twice, but a lot of those guys just had seemingly one victory, and they ruined great seasons. It could have been national championship seasons. So you kind of carry all of that with you. It's not just about you playing in this game. It's about the history, the last 100 years of this game and everything that goes into it, all the pageantry that surrounds it, the history that's in it, the gravity of these games. I believe this will be the 12th time where both teams are ranked in the top 5, with a Big Ten championship berth on the line, a chance to go to the CFP. There's just so many things around it. And then the reality is it's bragging rights for a year. You're a border state. There's a lot of Michigan fans in Ohio State. They came out in droves last season. They had been in hibernation for about 15, 20 years, and they came out. And there's a chestiness and something that's exciting about this that, I really haven't seen here for about the last 7 or 8 years.
It's interesting when you think about how rivalries have changed or intensified over the years, and some of the names that you bring up resonate so deeply with college football fans or just football fans in general. I look at the Michigan State rivalry and I think, man, has it gone too far? Are we at a place in this particular rivalry where it's different now than it was when you were playing, just in terms of the intensity?
I don't know if it's different in terms of the intensity. As far as the Michigan State deal, the single tunnel with Michigan, and not to absolve those guys, it gets guys in a proximity where bad things are going to happen. I say you let your kids play in the street, and eventually something bad will transpire. And listen, those guys, they did terrible things, but there's always been a respect. They're 364 days. You're trying to beat the other team. You respect them. You come on the field. You're playing hard. You're playing tough. The late great Earl Bruce. He always used to come in and trust to have him talk to us. And the guy played at Ohio State under Wes Fessler, coached under Woody Hayes, coached here for 9 years. Went 4-4, he got fired, and they let him coach the final game against Michigan. He wins that to have a winning record. And he would always tell us, trust to have him come in and speak to us the Sunday night before the game and talk about it'd be the hardest hitting game you'll ever be a part of, the toughest game you'll ever be a part of, but also the cleanest game you'll ever be a part of. And you see a little pushing, a little shoving, but rarely in this rivalry do you see late hits or dirty shots. Guys are going at it, and you might not be helping the other guy up, but there isn't any of this nonsense where there's, ill intent where you want to try to harm another player. You want to physically beat them on the field, but you want them to be healthy. You want them to be at their best, because that's when this rivalry is at its greatest.
So much has been made, Bobby, about Michigan's record, what they've been able to do this season. How do you view this particular meeting this weekend?
It's a lot like last season. Jim Harbaugh has built this team the way that he's wanted to. It's taken him 7-8 years to get to this point. Last year, they're a big physical bully run team with a very, very talented defensive front. And this year, they're a lot of the same. They've lost some guys. They lost Hassan Haskins. They lost their prize defensive ends from last year, and they're doing a great job in the NFL. But the reality is, Jim Harbaugh wants this team to kind of be the same every year, and he's got a more athletic quarterback in J.J. McCarthy. They haven't really pushed the ball down the field yet. Wait to see if they maybe try that on Saturday. But it's going to be similar. And Ohio State has spent the last 364 days. We got bullied up there in Ann Arbor, and that can't happen again on both sides of the ball. And defensively, they've been much better, bringing in Jim Knowles, and you can see how much more physical and tough the front seven is. And then offensively, can we run the football on them? We're a good passing offense, but when we have to run it, can we go run the football? And that's going to be something we'll find out on Saturday.
And is this the kind of stage where you want to make that discovery about whether or not you have an efficient run game? I mean, the spotlight is on you. You can't be one-dimensional, obviously, in a meeting like this, especially with how hungry these two teams are.
I think the problem was kind of for both teams in the Big Ten this year, and Notre Dame, I think, has kind of bounced back and played better. But outside of Penn State, there really hasn't been a good measuring stick for really either one of these teams in conference. And, it used to be called the Big Ten and the Big Two and the Little Eight. Not that we're there. Penn State's been very good. But, Michigan State hasn't been as good as they've been. Wisconsin, Iowa, a lot of these schools have been down. Illinois played better and gave Michigan a tough run. And obviously, Maryland played Ohio State very difficult. It was a very difficult game last week, but it was really hard to find out. And I think Ohio State found out a little something, with their fourth-string running back, Dallin Hayden, being able to kind of salt the game away last week and have a nice 5-minute drive that culminated in a field goal, not a touchdown, but to kind of establish that running game. And so it'll be tough. Ryan's going to stick with it. They've made an effort to be tough. They understand what it's going to be. The weather should be pretty good, maybe some rain, but it's not going to be crazy cold, not going to be crazy windy. And so it should be a pretty nice, if you can call Midwest nice in November, about as nice a day as you're going to get.
I know. I say it all the time. I used to live in Indiana. I remember these months and how punishing they can be. So if you can have any kind of temperate climate on a football Saturday, it's not a bad thing. When you think about your time playing in this rivalry, 3-1 against your bitter rival, do you have specific memories in terms of plays that really stand out to you? Or is it a kind of a macro view, just sort of collective fond memory of what it means to play in this rivalry?
Well, the sad thing about the human condition, especially for, people that are highly competitive, which I put most college athletes in that category, you generally remember the worst parts more than the best. And so the game that we lost, I can usually tend to pull a little more out of that. My sophomore year up there and Chris Perry having a career day and understanding that coming into that game, we'd won the year before, my freshman year. Tress had won his first year, and you felt like he was starting to turn. And not that everybody did, but looking at my mentality, we prepared hard. But I don't think we were prepared to match their level of desperation where you had Chris Perry, John Navarre, some really talented players who they weren't about to go 0-3 as starters against Ohio State. And so they were able to elevate that. And, they made more plays than we did that day, and they were tough and they were physical and they came out and got after us. So, I remember some of those Steve Breston returning punts and, different things happening in that game. But then there are some things you pull out, of the wins. And my senior year, I broke my ankle on the stinking first play of the game. So I had a front row seat to watch Troy Smith, put on a show in 2005, culminating with this unbelievable play to Anthony Gonzalez down the field. One of the greatest plays I've ever seen. There's about 40 seconds left on the clock, and it's third down. We've got about 45 yards to go. And eluding David Harris, who was a 10-year NFL linebacker, and finding Gonzo down the sideline was truly remarkable. So those things stick out to you. They're very vivid. And especially, I think when you're at home, because the crowd's behind you, you can hear the stadium after the plays. You can feel the energy. You can feel the emotion. And so the 2002 and 2004 games, there's a handful that I can pull out of those two that, you think about it and you talk to your friends, guys, your teammates about it. And almost you get emotional thinking about it because it's something that happened. It was so special at this time. And I try to relate to the young guys around the team a little bit. Just, dude, you'll have these memories for life.
Yeah.
Allow them to be the memories that you want and not the ones you want to forget.
I know. I was going to say, is there any good things coming out of playing 4 years against Michigan? But the national championship as well. Beating Miami in the Fiesta Bowl for college football fans, for fans of yours, people remember that as an incredible game. And I think about the kids who are playing now and just how slim the margin for error is. You look at a team like Tennessee that was on top of the world a couple weeks ago, and now they're, out of contention for that national title. It's tough to win one of those. How fondly do you remember, that 2002 season and what you guys were able to accomplish?
Oh, it was tremendous. And, that game, you try to remember and pull things out, but it was so special. It's such a whirlwind. You're engaged in it emotionally, and you win and you celebrate after the game. And you remember the overtimes and the anxiety of watching, Michael Jenkins be able to convert a 4th and 14, something that we would never have been able to do really all year. But, we always had plays like that all season. It was kind of a magical run. And I always tell, guys this in college football, like, listen, there's probably 3, 4, 5 teams that can win it every year. But the reality is, you need to have some luck. You need to have some things bounce your way. You need to make sure you stay healthy and get a call here or there. And my time at Ohio State, our 02 team was probably the third best team that I was actually involved with. 03 was better. And I think our 05 team, my senior year, was the best. And, you don't make a play here, you get beat by Texas and Vince Young there, and all of a sudden it doesn't work out. And so that's why when you're all able to win those games and you're able to go on a magical run and just always find a way, you realize how special it is after the fact, because in the moment it's just happening for you. And if anyone, you've ever have a friend who just always gets the breaks, like, gosh, like it always seems to work out for that person. Well, they probably don't really notice it. And after you finally kind of pull back from the matrix and realize, like, gosh, I mean, we had a lot of good things happen. That ball bounced right in the hands of one of our guys, or, instead of slipping and falling, you're able to make that play, or whatever it was. Like, those little things stay with you, and you realize how incredibly difficult it is to win.
CJ Stroud enters this rivalry week as a Heisman favorite. If he does something special this weekend, would that cement that status in your mind?
I think it's kind of down basically with Hendon Hooker getting hurt, unfortunately. To me, the Heisman, it's stats. It's about how good your team is, because let's face it, it's basically a quarterback award for the most part, except for Blake Corum. If he's healthy, I think he's got a shot still. And then it's about moments. And moments come in big games. They come in rivalry games. They come in critical situations. And so CJ is going to have an opportunity where the eyes of the nation are going to be on him. This is going to be probably the highest rated game of the weekend. And if he goes out and plays well and does some of the things that Troy Smith did 20 years ago, there's a good chance that he's going to win the Heisman. I would say it'd be more probable than not at that point. The other guy he's going against is Caleb Williams. They've got, Notre Dame this weekend. So obviously they'll have, a big game. There'll be a lot of cachet behind it. A lot of people will be watching, but I think this is the premier time. This is his opportunity to either win it or lose it. Because I don't know if you're going to leave the game and say, you know what, I could see him maybe winning it. I think you're going to either say this guy's the best and he was able to get it done in the biggest moment, or let's see what Caleb Williams is going to do tonight.
Are there other X factors in your mind, particularly the younger players as well? I mean, you mentioned how big of a moment this is. There's a couple freshmen who could have, a potential impact on this game. Is this a stage for them as well?
It's a huge stage. And the reality is there are very few guys on this team, because they didn't play in 2020, that have ever played in an Ohio State-Michigan game at home. And so a lot of the seniors, freshmen on the road, 2020 didn't exist, and they lost last year. And so it's up to some of the older guys, and this is why I think the connectivity between classes is so important, and obviously having older coaches and older players come back and to let them know how intense the game is going to be, what it's going to be like. And I liken it a little bit to the playoffs in the NFL. You think you've known it. You played 16, now 17 games, and the veterans always say, like, listen, it's another level. You're like, it's the highest level there is. What do you mean there's another level? There's another level, and there's another level for this game. And so the veteran players being able to make sure those guys understand wherever you think you're at, just try to prepare a little more and make sure you're emotionally ready to handle the tidal wave that's going to ultimately come at you. Because the young guys, you can be swallowed up in it in a hurry.
Who do you ultimately give the edge to in the matchup, and why?
Well, I mean, I'm an Ohio State guy. I see some of the stuff here behind me. I mean, I think Ohio State is the better football team. I think they're the more talented football team. But I've been a part of teams that were more talented and lost in this game. I've been a part of teams that were less talented and ultimately won. And I love Top Gun. I love Maverick. And one of the great lines, it comes down to the pilot in the box. On that day, how prepared are you, not just with game prep, but I keep talking about the emotional preparation of that, of understanding, being able to match the intensity of it, because there's nothing worse than to be able to get out there and be like, man, I wasn't ready for this. I didn't know that they were going to be playing this hard. It was going to mean this much. And you get kind of consumed by it. And you're trying to figure out solutions as opposed to coming in there knowing it's going to be an incredibly physical contest, knowing there's going to be ups, there's going to be downs, and that you're going to have to find a way to navigate through that process of feeling like you're going to win and then you're going to lose probably on successive plays.
How much of that is on the coaching staff? I mean, how do some of the younger kids on the team emotionally prepare for something that they may have, not experienced?
So I think that comes down to a lot of off-season training, putting guys in very adverse situations, making sure they're grinding through things, working really hard so they understand what it means to strain, what it means to be behind, what it means to not quit and continue to work. And then a lot of it is, veteran players, talking to them about it, making sure like, hey, you guys understand and realize this. And the coaches can help sculpt those situations during practice a little bit, but you've got to talk about it. And it can't be something you talk about for a week. And Ryan Day's done a great job of making sure like this is a daily thing. We're not going to let it dominate our thoughts because we're going to prepare for other teams. We have missions and things we need to get done each and every week. But obviously it's always going to be subconsciously there, and we're always going to be aware of it so that when the moment gets there, it's not like it was some foreign concept.
I do just want to quickly ask you about Ohio State's defense before I let you go. They've got a new defensive coordinator. Who are some names that we should kind of be watching if we haven't been paying attention as closely? And what impact do you ultimately think the new coach has had on the defense?
Well, there's a level of accountability that's really important. And let's not forget this. A lot of the guys, last year the defense wasn't very good. They hadn't really played. They had a COVID-shortened season. They'd missed training camps, missed spring ball, didn't get a chance. When you only play 6 games, and especially some of those non-conference games where you're a young guy, you get a chance to go get 20 or 30 plays when the game's out of reach. But Jim Knowles, scheme I love with how aggressive it is. They mix it up a lot. But the linebacker play has been tremendous. Tommy Eichenberg and Cody and Steele Chambers have been great. They work in Cody Simon too. Their tackling has been tremendous. If you're going to be a good defense, you have to be a good tackling team. So those guys have done a great job. JT Tuimoloau, Zach Harrison, Jack Sawyer, these young guys up on the edge. And Zach's a little older, but a senior who's a highly rated guy who's really playing some good ball. And I want to focus on the front 7 because that's where this game was won and lost last year. And I ultimately think that's where it will be won and lost this year. And you sprinkle in some safeties, Lathan Ransom, Ronnie Hickman, Josh Proctor. Like these guys are physical, tough guys. And if they're going to do it, I believe that this game, and historically, if you look at it, the team that controls and wins the rushing battle always wins this. No matter how good they are at throwing the ball, whoever seems to run the ball better on that day generally has won this game. And so those guys are going to be the ones that are going to be forced to make sure your assignment's sound, make sure you're tough and ready to go, and then ultimately find a way to get people to the ground.
Bobby, I really appreciate the time. You've had such a successful career. I mean, is there a party that misses playing college football on Saturdays in particular? I mean, the NFL is certainly a business. We see that week in and week out. But do you miss college football?
To me, college football is the greatest. And, I remember talking to Luke Fickell, who was my linebacker coach, now the head coach at Cincinnati, and he's done a great job there. And as you go talk to Vrabes would always come back. Mike Vrabel, who's Tennessee now, he's playing forever, and it's like college is fun. Like NFL, it's great, it's exciting, but it's also a job. But you live with the guys you play with in college, you eat together, your girlfriends hang out. I mean, it's like you're all at the same stage of life as opposing to be in the NFL, where my last year I'm 30, 31 years old. I mean, you don't have much in common with the 22-year-old guy who's trying to go out and hang out at night. I'm trying to go watch my kids like soccer games on Saturday morning after a walkthrough. Like you just get, and it's fun, but the pageantry that comes with it, the fact that, you're in college, it's just like at a big state school. I mean, you feel like the whole state is behind you. And so, yes, on Saturdays, and you watch these giant stadiums across the country get filled, and whether it's Ohio State, Michigan, Bama, you pick it. I mean, Texas, like there's great places. Like it's something that's different, and there's a different emotional element. And there's an experience there that you don't necessarily have in the NFL. So, yeah, a lot of the young guys who I get to see, I work out with, like, you like you still play, and I'm like, I could probably give you one game. The problem is waking up the next day, I would need to be in a gurney that you'd be like wheeling me into the hospital because I don't think I'd be able to walk for a month.
Bobby, that's great stuff. Thank you so much for being with us. Just real quick, where can people find you these days? What have you been up to?
So I got my local show here in Columbus on 97.1 The Fan, The Morning Juice. I'm on off campus on Sirius XM 84, ESPNU with Jacob Hester 3 or 4 days a week. And then I've got my YouTube channel, Carbs Corner, breaking down a lot of stuff with Ohio State and college football and keeping everybody kind of up to date with that. So it's been a lot of fun. If you can't play it, you can either coach it. I've got 4 kids. Coaching is rough on your family. I promised my wife I'd be easy on her. So talking about it is the next best thing. So I'm privileged to get to do that.
And if you can't coach it or play it, you can certainly watch it. You can eat turkey and watch it and absorb everything that you have to offer as well that you've got going on, which is probably appointment viewing for Ohio State fans. Bobby Carpenter, thank you so much.